Our second mission to the Philippines, the 1st of October, 2002, narrated by David Clark. This is the audio version of the book Before the Cock Crows, which is in 3 parts. This is the first part, which is like the daily diary of the mission. I arrived at Manila Airport, October the 2nd, Tuesday morning at 1:30 a.m. Philippine time. And that was where I met Reverend Lucas Dangatan and 2 of his helpers, who we called our Trojan warriors, Manny and Fernando Perez. We took a jeepney ride to our accommodation offered by Sister Neola Lizardo of McCall God's Grace Ministries at Soriano Compound, Putatan, which was comprised of a lovely primitive room, but also a large upper room, laid out in preparation for the team to stay. The team from England was due to arrive in a few days, which consisted of Gordon Smith, Alistair Sutherland, Andy MacDonald, Catherine Parr and Richard Kent. This accommodation had been arranged by Lucas Dangatan, for which we were very grateful. I consider this to be the provision of God, and I was delighted with it. I spoke the peace of God on the house and this place, according to the scriptures in Matthew 10:12. However, a problem did arise later. The next morning after the team had arrived, Dr. Richard Kent, who had come with us on this mission, found his camp bed too fragile and his weight broke the bed. He suggested that he and Gordon move to new accommodation in a local hotel somewhere to be in comfort, and suggested we did likewise. It was then I recalled the scripture not to move from house to house, as in Luke 10:7, and remain in the same house, eating and drinking such things as they gave, for the labourer is worthy of his wages. Do not go from house to house, and also eat what is ever set before you, asking no questions. I also felt it would seem that we were ungrateful if we were to move from the house of our host, who had gone to so much trouble in preparing for us. It was then I decided and informed Gordon that we would not be moving, so we stayed and enjoyed our stay. On reflection, I think it could be said that I was led by the Spirit, that is, by the principles of what the Spirit had written in the scripture. 2nd of October. Our host had problems. Reverend Lucas P. Dangatan informed me of the marital problems between Neola, our host of God Grace Ministries, and her husband Robert Lizardo, a pastor, as they had been living apart since April 2002. Neola was a missionary from America, working in New Bilibid prison, and had met Robert there, as he was a former inmate. Robert had become a Christian, and he and Neola were married. This was 13 years previously, and Robert had 2 children from a former marriage living at their Soriano compound in Putatan. It was their intention to run this as a halfway house to help inmates who had become Christians with somewhere to live upon leaving prison. I spoke to Sister Neola at a convenient time about her separation and to put her mind at rest, as I was very sympathetic to such problems and would assist them both as best I could, as I too had experienced marital difficulties and gone through divorce. Sister Neola had given me permission to mention this in my diary, as such difficulties affects Christians as well as non-believers. It turned out to be a very serious problem, as it was alleged by Neola that Robert had a relationship with another woman and she wanted a divorce from him, which was not allowed in the Philippine law. So they had been living separately since April 2002 and did not know how to go forward or deal with her problems. Robert Lizardo, being a former inmate of New Bilibid prison, and Neola had been working together in the ministry, and this had caused them both a problem, as they no longer worked together. Neola later alleged that he had married her for her money. It was stated that this was his way of getting support whilst in prison, as his former partner could not do so. It was alleged that Robert ordered her to marry another man so that he could be free to marry Neola. Neola stated this was a former marriage, and so his marriage to her was bigamy, which was a crime in the Philippine law. This had taken place 13 years ago. It was suggested that bigamy carried a 6 to 12-year prison sentence for Robert, her husband, and would result in an annulment of their marriage. This I mentioned later after my interview with Robert himself. McCall's God Grace Ministries was registered in the Philippines, and Robert was an incorporator along with 4 other incorporators, and the property at Soriano compound was owned by him. And any such annulment or divorce would result in very serious legal battles over property and the use of McCall's God Grace Ministries at Soriano compound. It was due to these serious matters that made our mission work that much more difficult, and much wisdom from the Lord was needed to deal with such matters.